Imagine driving alone at night on an empty road in Canada and never returning home. Sounds like something out of a horror movie, doesn't it? But the truth is far more disturbing than any fiction. Hundreds of people have mysteriously disappeared on Canadian highways in recent decades. And the most frightening thing is that many of these cases have never been solved. These aren't just ordinary roads where accidents happen. No, we're talking about places where the inexplicable becomes reality, where experienced drivers simply refuse to pass after the sun goes down. Have you ever felt that inexplicable chill while driving alone in the early hours of the morning? That strange feeling that something isn't right, even when everything seems normal? Now multiply that by 100 and add real stories of people who felt exactly that moments before disappearing without a trace. Canada, known worldwide for its stunning landscapes and the hospitality of its people, hides a dark side that few know. Between its endless forests and highways that cut through isolated territories, there is something that defies all logic. Today you'll discover 7 haunted highways where paranormal phenomena, unexplained disappearances, and terrifying sightings are part of the reality for those who dare to travel these cursed roads. And before you think these are just urban legends or exaggerated stories, know that many of these accounts have been documented by the police, recorded in newspapers, and confirmed by witnesses who survived to tell what they saw. You'll find out why veteran truckers prefer to take long alternative routes, even if it means extra hours of travel, just to avoid passing through certain stretches when darkness falls. Stay with me until the end, because each of these highways has a unique and chilling story. Some are linked to ancient indigenous legends that speak of restless spirits that eternally wander these lands. Others have a direct connection to real tragedies, mass fatal accidents, or brutal crimes that were never fully solved. And then there are those where things happen that simply have no rational explanation, phenomena that challenge even the most convinced skeptics. What you're about to discover might surprise you, might scare you, and will definitely make you think twice before taking any deserted road at night. Leave a like if you're brave enough to watch until the end, because some of these stories will stick in your mind for a long time. And if you've ever had a strange experience on a highway, get ready to comment, because I want to know all the details. Let's begin our journey along Canada's most haunted roads, places where the line between the world of the living and something far more sinister seems to completely disappear. Prepare yourself, because what comes next is not for the faint of heart. Every kilometer of these highways carries stories that go far beyond what you can imagine, tales that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the supernatural. And you know what? You, watching this video right now, are part of a community that isn't afraid to explore the unknown, that feels that same almost magnetic curiosity for stories that most people prefer to ignore. And that's precisely why I need to ask you something. If this topic resonates with you, if you also feel this fascination with the inexplicable, hit that subscribe button now and activate the bell, because every week I bring you new stories of haunted places, unexplained disappearances, and paranormal phenomena that will make you question reality. You won't want to miss the next video, I guarantee it. And one more thing, by liking and sharing this video, you help other people who also love this type of content find us. That's how we create a true community of supernatural explorers, people who are unsatisfied with superficial explanations and want to delve deeper into the mysteries the world tries to hide. So if you're here, it's because you've already shown you have enough courage. Now let's discover together what really happens on those 7 cursed highways. Because the time has come to dive headfirst into the most chilling stories you've ever heard. Highway 7, Highway 16, the Highway of Tears. Let's start with Highway 16 in British Columbia, a road that carries a name as heavy as its history, the Highway of Tears. Just hearing that name makes you feel that something very dark happened there, and unfortunately, the truth hidden behind that nickname is even more disturbing than any urban legend could be. This highway cuts through 724 kilometers of dense, isolated forest, where civilization seems too distant to offer any kind of comfort or security. Since the 1970s, more than 40 women have disappeared or been found dead along this road, most of them young indigenous women who were simply trying to get from one place to another. often hitchhiking due to a lack of public transportation in the region. These are real cases investigated by the police that generated national and international outrage, but what few people know is that there is an even stranger layer to this whole story. Drivers who travel along Highway 16, especially at night or during the harsh winter, report experiences that go far beyond the common fear of driving on a deserted road. They see women standing on the side of the road, desperately begging for a ride, and when they stop to help, these figures simply vanish the moment you blink. Some say they managed to open the car door and the woman got in, sat silently in the back seat. But when they looked in the rearview mirror seconds later, there was no one there anymore. Others speak of lights that appear out of nowhere, following vehicles for miles on end without any logical explanation, as if something were watching every movement, every decision of anyone who dares to cross that stretch. But the most disturbing thing of all is the feeling these people describe, a deep, oppressive sadness that takes over the chest without warning, as if you were carrying the pain of all those lives that were interrupted there. It's a heavy, dense energy that can't be explained solely by the historical context, but seems to permeate the asphalt itself, the trees, the icy air that cuts through the skin. The victims' families are still searching for answers, still mourning their daughters, sisters, and mothers who never returned home, and many firmly believe that the souls of these women remain trapped on that road, wandering in search of justice, peace, or simply a way back to those they loved. This is not just a story of unsolved crimes or isolated paranormal phenomena. It is a portrait of the profound impact that violence and abandonment have left on an entire community and which now manifests itself in ways that defy any rational explanation. Highway 6, Yellowhead Highway, apparitions in the fog. Following this journey along Canada's most unsettling roads, we arrive at the Yellowhead Highway, a highway that crosses the mountainous and utterly isolated regions of Alberta and British Columbia. The scenery itself is impressive, with gigantic mountains on both sides, seemingly endless forests, and that heavy silence that only truly remote places can offer. But what transforms this road into something truly terrifying is the fog. I'm not talking about that light morning mist, but a thick, dense fog that literally appears out of nowhere and swallows everything around it in a matter of seconds. You're driving on a clear afternoon, with perfect visibility, and suddenly it's as if someone threw a white blanket in front of you, reducing your vision to just a few meters ahead of the hood. This fog has something wrong with it. Drivers who have been traveling there for decades say it doesn't behave as it should, appearing at times and places where it makes no meteorological sense. And it is precisely within it that the strangest phenomena occur. Truck drivers who regularly travel the Yellowhead Highway report experiences that defy all logic. They tell stories of seeing other vehicles coming in the opposite direction, sometimes huge trucks, sometimes old cars that clearly don't belong to this era. And at the moment of imminent collision, when you close your eyes expecting impact, the other vehicle simply passes through yours as if it were made of air, like a ghost passing through a wall. There is no noise, no impact, just that sudden cold that takes over the cabin and an inexplicable feeling of terror. Some drivers had to stop on the side of the road to calm down, trembling, trying to process what they had just experienced. But perhaps the most disturbing are the accounts of accidents that seem to be trapped in a time loop, repeating themselves endlessly. People driving along Yellowhead see horrific collisions happening ahead of them, cars overturning, trucks leaving the road, fire, scattered debris, and when they accelerate to try to help or at least check the situation, they arrive at the scene and find absolutely nothing. No skid marks, no pieces of glass, no marks on the asphalt, as if it had been a projection, a memory from the past manifesting in the present. Paranormal investigators believe these are echoes of real tragedies that occurred there, violent deaths that left such a deep mark on reality that they continue to repeat themselves, like a film stuck in an eternal replay. And there's one specific case that chills even the most convinced skeptics. In 2009, an experienced truck driver, with over 20 years on the road, swore he saw a 1950s school bus, one of those classic yellow ones with black lettering, coming from the opposite direction. But it wasn't an ordinary bus. It was completely engulfed in flames, with fire shooting out of the windows, and through the flames, silhouettes of children sitting motionless in the seats could be seen, as if frozen in time. The man instinctively slammed on the brakes, his heart raced, and he stood there in the middle of the road, watching that impossible scene approach. But before he could do anything, before he could grab his cell phone, scream, "Get out of the truck," the bus simply dissolved into the fog, disappearing as if it had never existed. He spent the rest of the night in shock, questioning his own sanity, but then discovered he wasn't alone, that other drivers had seen the exact same thing over the years. This revelation that there are multiple witnesses, people who don't know each other but describe the same impossible events, is what makes Yellowhead Highway so fascinating and terrifying at the same time. It's not just one person hallucinating or making up a story, it's a pattern, something that repeats itself with frightening consistency. If you like this story, you'll love and be chilled by the last one on this list, so stick around until the end to find out. Highway 5, Route 93, the road of the spirits of the Rocky Mountains. And if you think haunted roads are exclusive to isolated or obscure regions, get ready, because Route 93 crosses one of the most impressive landscapes in North America, the Rocky Mountains. It's literally a postcard, you know. The kind of view that makes you stop the car just to take a picture, with snow-capped peaks, ancient glaciers, and canyons that cut through the land like open wounds in the landscape. But behind all this beauty lies a layer of mystery that few tourists know about before setting foot there. And when they discover it, it's too late to ignore it. The truth is that the indigenous tribes who inhabited this region, long before any roads were built, always knew that this place was unlike any other. They considered the Rocky Mountains sacred territory, but also haunted. It wasn't just spiritual respect, it was real fear. According to oral traditions passed down through generations, warriors and shamans who died defending those lands never truly left. They stayed, protecting, watching. And anyone who disrespected the space or simply had the misfortune of crossing the wrong path at the wrong time could feel their presence. Not as something welcoming, but as a force that observes you, that weighs you down, that makes you question whether you should be there. And here's the part that chills me. These stories didn't stay in the past. They keep happening. Drivers traveling Route 93 today, ordinary people, tourists with cell phones and GPS on, report things that simply don't make sense. Voices whispering in languages no one can identify, but which seem to come from inside the car, as if someone were in the back seat. Shadows walking among the trees in broad daylight. Human figures moving with a strange slowness, almost floating, and when you blink, they disappear. But the most disturbing thing is the accounts of cars that simply stop working at specific points on the road. Without warning, the engine dies, the lights go out, and you're left there, stopped in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by those immense mountains that seem to swallow you whole. And then, minutes later, everything returns to normal. The car starts on its own, as if nothing had happened, as if something had simply decided that you could continue. It's as if the mountain itself decides who can and cannot pass. This isn't an urban legend. It's the kind of thing truck drivers who have been driving this route for years confirm in hushed tones, almost ashamed to admit it. They know where these stops happen. They avoid certain stretches at night. They don't pull over at certain points, because experience has taught them that there are invisible rules on that road, and breaking them can cost more than a simple scare. It can cost you your peace of mind. It can make you question everything you thought you knew about the world. And perhaps that's exactly what these spirits want. For us to remember that not everything is under our control, that not everything can be explained, and that some forces simply demand respect. Comment below, I would respect this mountain if this story impressed you. Highway 4, Trans-Canada. Highway, Rogers Pass section, the portal of time. But there's a story that defies everything we know about logic, physics, and even the very notion of reality. And this isn't one of those legends someone told someone who told you. No. This one has documentation. It has witnesses. It has evidence that no one can explain. I'm talking about the Trans-Canada Highway, specifically the section that passes through Rogers Pass, a stretch of road that crosses the mountains between British Columbia and Alberta. At first glance, it's just another beautiful highway, surrounded by wild nature, with that adventurous vibe that everyone loves. But since the 1960s, something very strange has been happening to those who travel there. And when I say strange, I'm not talking about lights in the sky or shadows on the road. I'm talking about something much more disturbing. People who literally waste time. And it's not like, oh, time flew by. It's real time that disappears without explanation. Let me give you a concrete example. You enter this section of the highway at 2 in the afternoon, drive normally for about 20 minutes. That feeling of a smooth trip, beautiful scenery, everything's fine. But when you come out on the other side and look at the clock, it's already 5 in the afternoon. You lost almost 3 hours. And you didn't sleep. You didn't stop to rest. There was no blackout. You were conscious the whole time, but those hours simply vanished from your day, as if someone had jumped on the remote control of your life. And the worst part, you can't explain what happened. There's no memory of what you did, what you saw, where you were in that interval. It's a complete void. This isn't science fiction. It happens frequently enough that locals avoid that stretch of road at certain times. And the theories attempting to explain this phenomenon are enough to keep anyone awake at night. Some believe that ancient avalanches that devastated that region over the centuries created some kind of distortion in space-time, as if the violence of nature had torn the fabric of reality and left an invisible scar. Others speak of a dead zone, a place where the veil between dimensions is thinner, where our world and something beyond coexist in an unstable way. And if you think that sounds too absurd, wait until you hear about the case that really put Rogers Pass on the map of unexplained phenomena. In 2015, a family set off for an important appointment. They had planned everything perfectly, leaving early and entering the Trans-Canada Highway at the exact time. They even took photos along the way, those travel selfies everyone takes. And the photos had timestamps, that automatic date and time record that the camera makes. Everything matched perfectly. But when they arrived at their destination, they were 4 hours late. 4 hours that no one in the family could explain. They swore they had driven normally, without long stops, without detours. But the most bizarre thing? Their GPS showed that the car had been stopped for hours at a specific point on the road. But when they tried to locate that point later, no one could find it. There was no shoulder, no viewpoint, nothing to justify a stop there. And the photos? The photos showed that they were in motion, inside the car, at the time they should have been. But the time simply didn't add up. Think about the feeling of powerlessness that is. You have proof that you were doing everything right, but reality tells you otherwise. You didn't drink, you didn't use anything, you were lucid, but you lost a piece of your day, and you have no idea how. This messes with your perception of control over your own life, you know? Because if time can simply slip through your fingers without you noticing, what else might be happening without you knowing? What other hidden truths exist in the places we pass by every day thinking we understand perfectly? Rogers Pass isn't just a road. It's a reminder that the journey of our existence can have many more layers than we imagine, and some of those layers simply don't follow the rules we've learned. Highway 3, Highway 11, Ontario. The Ghost Man. Highway. And if you think wasting time is the limit of what a Canadian road can do to you, let me tell you about something that goes beyond physics and enters straight into the territory of classic supernatural, the kind of story that seems straight out of a horror movie, but has so many consistent accounts over so many decades that it's impossible to ignore. I'm talking about Highway 11 in Ontario, a highway that connects several small towns, and carries with it the most documented and chilling urban legend in all of Canada, the Ghost Man of Kirkland Lake. And look, I know that ghost stories about hitchhiking are cliches. Everyone's heard a version of it somewhere. But this one has a level of detail and repetition that transforms skepticism into real doubt. The pattern is always the same, and that's what's most frightening. It's not different stories that are mixed together. It's dozens of drivers, over decades, from the 1950s to today, describing exactly the same experience. You're driving at night on Highway 11, sometimes alone, sometimes returning from an appointment, and suddenly you see a man standing on the side of the road. He's dressed in an old suit, one of those formal cuts that nobody wears anymore, and he signals for a ride. And here's the thing. Most of the people who stop say they felt a strange compulsion to help, as if they couldn't simply ignore it and move on. So they stop. He gets in the back seat, always polite, always calm, and gives a specific address. Always the same address. During the ride, he doesn't say a word. He just sits there in absolute silence, looking out the window, and drivers report a feeling of heaviness, as if the air inside the car has become denser, harder to breathe. But you keep going because, well, you've already made a commitment to take him to where he asked. But when you arrive at the address he gave you, you look in the rearview mirror to let him know you've arrived, and he's simply not there anymore. The back seat is empty, door closed, no sound of a door opening, no movement. He just disappeared, as if he'd never been there. And the shiver that runs down your spine at that moment, that chill that marks you for the rest of your life. But the story gets even darker when you discover the background of this apparition. Researchers who dedicated themselves to investigating these accounts did something obvious. They went to the address the man always gives, and they discovered that this address corresponds to a house that caught fire in 1947. A devastating fire that killed the entire family who lived there. And among the victims was a man who, according to old records and photos from the time, wore exactly the type of suit the drivers describe. The connection is impossible to ignore. It's as if he's still trying to get back home, trapped in some time loop, eternally repeating the last journey he never managed to complete. And there's a detail that takes all of this to another level. Some drivers, the most attentive or perhaps the most sensitive, said that in the seconds before he disappeared, they heard a whisper. It wasn't clear, it wasn't loud, but it was audible, and what he said was always the same thing. I just wanted to go home. Imagine the emotional impact of that. It's not a scary ghost, screaming or threatening. It's someone lost, someone who carries a desire so strong that not even death could extinguish it. And that's perhaps more disturbing than any monster, because it makes you think about what really happens when we leave, about whether there are desires so deep that they keep us here even when everything should have ended. Highway 11 isn't just a road, it's a portal to a truth no one wants to face. That perhaps death isn't the end of everything, and perhaps there are journeys that simply don't end, no matter how much time passes. And knowing this changes the way you look at any deserted road at night. Highway 2. Highway 2A, Alberta, the road of dancing lights. There's a type of phenomenon that defies not only logic but science itself. And when that happens, when experts with all the equipment and knowledge in the world simply throw up their hands and say, "We do not know how to explain it," that's when things get really intriguing. And that's exactly what happens on Highway 2A in Alberta, on the stretch between Red Deer and Edmonton. If you drive through there at night, especially during the colder seasons, there's a very real chance you'll witness something that will be etched in your memory forever. Orange lights floating above the road, dancing in patterns that simply don't make sense. They rise, fall, spin, approach, move away, as if they were alive, as if they had consciousness and purpose. And before you think it's the northern lights or some reflection from distant headlights, let me stop you right now. Scientists have investigated this several times, over decades. They ruled out the northern lights because the pattern and color don't match. They ruled out reflectors because the lights appear in places where there are no structures to generate that kind of effect. They ruled out drones because, well, these lights have been appearing for over 100 years, since before electricity arrived in that region, since a time when the only sources of light at night were oil lamps and bonfires. So what the heck are these lights? Nobody knows. And perhaps that's precisely why alternative explanations, those that science avoids touching on, are starting to make more sense. because there's a detail about Highway 2A that few people know, but which completely changes the context of these appearances. This highway was built on an old trail that European settlers used in the 19th century to cross Alberta in search of land and opportunities. But this journey was brutal. We're talking about Canadian winters, the kind that kill in a matter of hours if you're not prepared. And in the winter of 1888, specifically, one of the worst tragedies of the colonization of that region occurred. Dozens of people died of cold, hunger, and some even in attacks while trying to cross that hostile territory. Many of these bodies were never found, never buried, never had a funeral. They simply disappeared into the icy vastness of Alberta. And here comes the theory that chills even the most skeptical. Locals who have lived in the region for generations believe that these orange lights are lanterns. Not physical lanterns, but the lanterns that those lost settlers carried while desperately trying to find their way home, to safety, to life. And they believe that these spirits are still searching. They are still walking the road, still trying to complete the journey that death interrupted. And when these lights get very close to your car, something happens that has no rational explanation. You feel an inexplicable cold, a cold that cuts to the bone, that makes you tremble involuntarily, even with the car heater on full blast, even with all the windows closed. It's a cold that doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, as if something had touched your soul. Drivers who have experienced this describe a feeling of profound sadness, almost as if they could feel the despair of those who died there. It's not necessarily fear, it's forced empathy, an involuntary connection to the suffering of someone who lived more than a century ago. And this causes a transformation in the way you see the world. Because suddenly you realize that the roads we drive on every day, thinking they are just asphalt and signage, can be laden with stories, pain, and memories that refuse to disappear. Highway 2A is not just a road between two cities. It's a living memorial, a place where the past and present coexist in a visible, tangible, and frightening way. And perhaps the most disturbing thing is realizing that these revelations about what truly exists around us are happening all the time, but we choose to ignore them because it's more comfortable to live in a predictable reality. But when you see those lights dancing in front of you, when you feel that cold that shouldn't be there, you can no longer ignore it. The hidden truth is revealed, and you never look at a road the same way again. Write this down. This cold must be terrifying, if this story affected you in any way. Highway 1, Ice Road, Northwest Territories, the road that shouldn't exist. What I'm about to tell you will make you completely rethink the concept of a road, because we're used to thinking of highways as something solid, permanent, built to last. But what if I told you there's a road in Canada that simply doesn't exist for half the year? That it only forms when winter arrives, when entire lakes freeze and transform into a surface capable of supporting trucks weighing tens of tons? I'm talking about the Ice Road in the Northwest Territories, one of the most extreme and dangerous routes on the planet. And it's also the place where the most inexplicable disappearances you've ever heard of occur. Because we're not talking about normal accidents, ice breaking, or adverse weather conditions. We're talking about something that seems to come from another dimension. Truck drivers who travel this route, carrying vital supplies to isolated mines that have no other way of receiving resources, tell stories that would make any normal person refuse the job on the spot. They report that while driving on the ice, in absolute silence because the engine is the only sound for miles, they hear knocking coming from below. It's not the ice cracking, a sound they know well and expected. It's something different. It's rhythmic. It's deliberate. As if something or someone were trying to get their attention. And in some cases, in accounts that leave you breathless, drivers said they saw hands, human hands pressing against the frozen surface from below, as if trying to get out, as if trapped there and desperate for help. And it doesn't stop there. The radios, those CB radios that truckers use to communicate with each other, sometimes pick up voices. Voices that shouldn't be there. Voices calling for help, speaking in Old French, a dialect that even native Canadian French speakers can't quite understand. And this raises a terrifying question. Who is speaking? Where are these transmissions coming from? because there's no one alive in that region speaking 18th century French, but the voices are there, clear enough to be heard, desperate enough to haunt your dreams. But what truly elevates the ice road to a whole different level of terror are the disappearances. We're not talking about one or two isolated cases. Several trucks simply vanished, completely. Search and rescue teams, with all the necessary equipment, scoured the area, looking for holes in the ice, for wreckage, for any sign of where these vehicles might have gone. And they found nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's as if these trucks and their drivers were erased from existence, ripped from reality, and thrown somewhere we can't reach. And here's something that will make you see all of this in an even darker light. The Diné indigenous people, who have inhabited that region for thousands of years, have a word for it: Nakani. According to their traditions, these are spirits that live under the ice and have the power to drag the living to a frozen realm, a place from which there is no return. And truck drivers who survived strange incidents on the ice road, those who had experiences they can't explain but that marked them forever, made a unanimous decision never to return. They abandoned their profession, change routes, do anything to avoid having to go through that place again. Because the psychological impact of feeling that something tried to pull you under the ice is greater than any salary can compensate for. And the worst part, every year, because of global warming, the ice road is open for less time. The ice is getting thinner, the season is getting shorter, but the reports aren't decreasing, they're increasing, as if something down there is becoming more active, more urgent, closer to the surface, as if the melting ice is releasing something that should have remained trapped forever. And this transformation in the environment may be creating a window of opportunity for forces we shouldn't even be in contact with. Comment below. I would never drive on that road. These 7 highways prove that Canada isn't just natural beauty and safety. There's a dark, inexplicable side, where the veil between our world and the unknown seems thinner. Drivers disappear, time distorts, and spirits wander. Tell me in the comments, would you have the courage to drive on any of these roads? Do you know any similar stories? Share them below. I read and interact with all the comments. And if you want more dark mysteries of Canada, watch this video over there about haunted abandoned hotels where bizarre things still happen. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like to support us, and turn on notifications, because every week there's new content about the most haunted and mysterious places in Canada. Until next time, and be careful on the roads.